Hello, my friend, and welcome back, or welcome to Something for Everybody. This is episode 400 of the podcast, and I'm extremely proud and honored to have made it to the 400 club. I feel like a baseball player. I feel like Barry Bonds hitting his 400th home run, but I've made it to the 400 club. 400 episodes, 400 podcast episodes here on Something for Everybody. And I'm thrilled. I'm proud of myself. So for those that have been with me since the very beginning, thank you. Those that came at episode 100 or 200 or 300 or 350, or this is your first episode, thank you. I appreciate you very much. And throughout this episode, I just want to kind of give a podcast history. I want to reminisce. I want to talk about how we got here to 400 episodes and maybe what's in the future for the podcast. So if you're a brand new listener, thank you. This is a perfect episode to understand what we do here at Something for Everybody. And if you've been here since the very beginning, well, maybe I'll jog your memory with some stuff you might have forgotten. In our brand new studio, you can see our brand new background. If you look at any of the episodes previous, there's a few different backgrounds we had. This is my brand new studio that I've built in my backyard to open up space in my house for my son, who's going to be born here soon. And so we're just, living the dream, man. It's never been so good. So thank you. God bless. And let's talk about this. Let's talk about how we got to 400 podcast episodes. It's actually more. I had to delete a bunch, which you'll find out why. So maybe we're in the 500, 600 range. Also, I only count specific episodes. I also do snippets. I also do short episodes. These are just full episodes, 400 full episodes. I mean, crazy. If you go to my Apple Podcasts, and I think if you look all the way at the bottom, it says total episodes, it's like 647 or something crazy like that. So we're pumping out the content here at Something for Everybody. So thanks for tuning in. Again, if you want to check out any way to support the podcast, just hit the links in the show notes below. You can go to everybodyspod.com/deals for everything that we do, but Patreon is the best place. You can shop our merch at shopforeverybody.com. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. I had the idea for this podcast in 2019, but in 2019, my full-time job was a professional wrestler. I was a professional wrestler named Jackson Stone. And at the time, I was mostly playing a heel character, but I was a bit moving out of that heel character because of some personal stuff that happened in my life. I'll share that now because it's relevant to the story and how I changed and the way I view life changed, my perspective changed. So in 2018, in September of 2018, I lost my big sister, Rachel, to suicide, which is in the podcast description, the podcast bio on Spotify and Apple. So you may have already known that, you may have already read that, or you may have heard me talk about it a lot, but it's the most important sort of moment in my life that changed the trajectory of how I think, feel, and act, and why I care so much about the things that I do, and why my massive transformative purpose in life is to end mental suffering, and this podcast is a vehicle for that. So that happens in 2018. I'm a full-time professional wrestler. I moved back to Dallas in 2019 because I was living in Philadelphia with my buddy named Wheeler Yuta, who now wrestles for AEW. You can check him out there. And so in 2019, I was thinking about how do I, create more content. I was making some videos on YouTube. There's some pretty funny sort of TMZ-esque videos on YouTube. They're still on there if you want to go check them out, because my character at the time was Lights Camera Jackson. I was pretending to be a movie star, and at the time didn't have a lot of funds, didn't have a lot of money, so I was just making things work because I wanted to be in WWE. That was my ultimate goal. And it wasn't really my ultimate goal in 2019. I had a tryout for WWE in 2018. Just had this sense in the back of my mind that it wasn't for me anymore. And then a few months later, my sister passed away, and it took me a few years to figure out really what I wanted to do with my life fully, because I'd wanted to be in WWE and be a WWE champion since the time I was 12. I've had two loves in my life, baseball and wrestling, and guys used to ask me in high school and in college, would you rather be a professional baseball player, professional wrestler? And my answer was always professional wrestler. I had an amazing college baseball career, had offers to go play. Beyond that, didn't want to, became a professional wrestler. And then I lose my sister in 2018. And then in 2019, I moved back home trying to figure out, what I want to do with my content. How can I get my content out there more? How can I, engage with people more? So I'm like, okay, I'll start a podcast. And since I'm sort of like this egotistical sort of maniac type person, the podcast will just be me bringing a guest on and then asking them questions about me. So say I bring on this guy named Jordan. So Jordan, what is your favorite Jackson Stone moment? Why do you love Jackson Stone so much? What makes Jackson Stone the best professional wrestler in the world? These would be very short episodes, maybe 5-10 minutes, but all about me asking questions about me to my guests. And I thought that was just an amazing idea. And the podcast was going to be called Jackson Talks Everybody. And it was called that for a very long time. And then after a few episodes, that kind of got really dry, really boring. And I also had this tug on my heart that I just wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't honoring my sister in the way that I wanted to. I'd really started talking about mental health on my social media channels. I had this genesis idea for You Are Loved. I started doing You Are Loved videos of sharing people's mental health stories. I started selling You Are Loved t-shirts. This was sort of the beginning stages of what is now my official 501c3 nonprofit, You Are Loved. You can go to youarelovedlife.com if you want to check out more of that. But again, the best place to support that nonprofit is also through the Patreon, because everything I do is connected through mental health awareness, and through You Are Loved. And so that just didn't make me feel great. And I was also going to shows, still trying to be a heel, while also talking about things that were very personal and vulnerable online. And there was to start to be this tug of war in my heart and in my body, and it just didn't feel good. So I wanted to not stop wrestling. I still really wanted to wrestle at that time, because we're in 2019. But I needed to change sort of my dynamic, my character. So I dropped the whole lights, camera, Jackson thing, and I just was myself. Just with a pretend name, Jackson Stone, everybody. And I wanted to share more intimate details. I wanted to connect deeper with the fans, because fans, obviously, they're regular people in the real world, are struggling with their mental health as well. You learn tons of professional wrestlers are struggling with their mental health as well, like a lot of addiction and suicide and abuse of drugs happen in the professional wrestling world, just like any other serious entertainment industry. And so the name remained Jackson Talks Everybody, but I started having more in-depth and deep conversations on my podcast throughout the rest of 2019 and throughout early 2020. And then COVID hits in March of 2020. And then in June of 2020, we have this sort of catastrophic event that happens in the professional wrestling business called Speaking Out, where a bunch of people spoke out about abuse and foul play and all these sorts of things in the professional wrestling world. And many people that I had done episodes with or talked about were in those conversations and being accused, and it being true, and all these sorts of things happening. And the guy that I was living with also had that happen to him. And so there was just a big mess, and all these sorts of things happened. And so I had to remove and delete a bunch of episodes. That's why maybe we're past 400 episodes, because throughout in like January 2020 to June of 2020, I was having guests on. I was talking. I was doing hotline shows. I was doing all these sorts of things. I was traveling across seas, and I was having conversations with people overseas, like Aaron Simmons and things of that nature. And all this stuff was great. And then boom, that hits. Speaking Out movement happens, and I just have to delete and remove a bunch of episodes. And so episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all got filmed previous to that. So I kept those, like some with my friends and some with my mom. Not great episodes. Didn't have a mic, didn't have a camera stand, didn't really have anything. Weird episodes, sort of in this like wrestling stage of my life still. I mean, it's 5 years ago. I'm completely changed now. I'm a husband now. I'm about to be a father, right? I'm not running around in my underwear doing professional wrestling like I was 5 years ago. And so there's still those 5 episodes, but I consider episode 6 really to be the restart and the first official episode of the podcast, which got released on June 29th, 2020, episode 6. It's called Restart. And that's really what kicked off the podcast. So that's sort of the genesis, how we got here, how we got to episode 6, why I had to delete so many episodes, what happened in professional wrestling with the Speaking Out movement, COVID, all of that stuff happened. And then because of COVID, I basically did not have a job right when COVID hit, because it's really hard to wrestle in front of no people. And so I had to figure my life out. I got a job at Walmart in Fort Worth, which is about 45 minutes away from where I was living. Worked there for about 6 months to sort of figure out what I wanted to do. And I told myself, I want to go all in. I want to go all in on the podcast and public speaking and mental health and coaching and all these sorts of things that are really giving me a lot of fulfillment and passion. And it's a way to honor my sister, to love my sister, and to maybe prevent things like that from happening to future families or future people. And so that was sort of my mission. I dialed that in, not totally dialed it in. It's taken me a few more years to really get crisp on my massive transformative purpose, which is to end mental suffering. But I had the ideas then, driving to and from Walmart 45 minutes alone, working alone, doing all these sorts of things, and then stopped that job, got back into this space. I just needed enough money and funds to be able to make sure I was still able to stay afloat and pay my mortgage and all those sorts of things. And then, boom, June 29th, episode 6, restart. And that was really how the ball kept rolling. And then I still had the name Jackson Talks Everybody, but really and then you fast forward to March of 2022. I was still wrestling a little bit. Wrestling came back 2021, but it wasn't the same. I didn't feel the same about it. I wasn't going balls to the wall. I wasn't trying to get a contract or go to WWE. I was really trying to do all this other stuff in content creation and be an entrepreneur and all these sorts of things and share the wisdom I'd learned and wisdom I know from guests and all these other sorts of things. And so March 2022, I slowly stepped away, or quietly stepped away from the professional wrestling industry, did not retire, didn't tell anyone, just said, I'm not going to wrestle for a little bit. Just stepped away in March of 2022. And then the rest of the year, I thought to myself, because I would still have Jackson Stone in all of my socials, I didn't know if I should go back to Aaron Machbitz. I didn't know if people were going to leave me or if that was weird or if I'd lose my following. And all this sort of doubts start to creep in about who I am as an actual person instead of who I am with Jackson Stone. And it took me from March of 2022 all the way up to January of 2023 to finally drop Jackson Stone, to go full-blown Aaron Machbitz, and to rebrand my podcast. So the first 135 episodes of the podcast were under Jackson Talks Everybody. And then January of 2023, on episode 136 with Professor Anthony, I decided to change the name to Something for Everybody, which that merch is available at shopforeverybody.com, official home of Something for Everybody podcast merch. And so January of 2023, I decided I was going to change the name, officially changed the name, rebranded it, episode 136, Something for Everybody. And at the time in 2023, I was really doing one episode a week. Previously, I started with one episode every other week. And then I went to one episode a week. And then January 2023, I was one guest episode a week and one solo episode of the week. And so I was doing January 2023, I decided really to go pro with that. So it was one guest episode a week, one solo episode of the week. So I really ramped up my number of episodes, between January 2023 and right now, August 5th, 2025, episode 400, right? We've done, quite a few episodes in those first 3 years. We only did about 100 and from June 2020 to January 2023, we only did 130 4 or 5 episodes. And so actually 130. And then after that, so then January goes really well. We have our best numbers as a podcast in 2023. And then in June of 2024, I said, this is really what I want to do. This podcast is my baby. I love this thing. I love learning and growing and talking and learning out loud and saying things that don't make sense and learning from that and growing and making mistakes and failing out loud and falling down in public and then talking about it and learning these new subjects and exploring ideas with guests and meeting new people all around the world. And so June of 2024, I decided to really turn pro. So I just ramped everything up. I was going to release something every single day. And so that's what I do. On Monday, I have a sports show that gets released that's connected to Champions Adjust, but it gets released on my YouTube channel, but the audio on Spotify gets released on Champions Adjust. You can go to champsadjust.com if you want to see any of that. It's mental performance coaching. It's a podcast. It's a clothing brand. It's called Champions Adjust. It's my sports performance brand. So that happens on a Monday. And then on Tuesday, we release an episode with a guest. And then on Wednesday, I release some sort of video and audio on something culturally relevant, these are sort of my least evergreen episodes, right? Everything else is really evergreen. These episodes are really culturally relevant, usually about Israel or, whatever the case may be, something that's really on the top of my mind that I research or make a video, and that usually comes out Wednesday. And if I don't create a new video for that, then it becomes a really salient clip from one of my episodes that I feel like is really powerful. That comes out on Wednesday. So that's a brand new episode that I have to make. So that's 3 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then on Thursday, another sports show comes out that's on my YouTube channel, which Champions Adjust is connected to. And then it goes on the Champions Adjust Spotify page. So that's 4 days. And then on Friday, it's a solo episode, usually distilling some sort of personal development, self-help topic, mental health, excellence, longevity, resilience, mental skills, mental performance, all of that stuff. So that's on a Friday. That's a solo episode. So again, sports show, guest episode, some sort of current event topic, another sports show, a solo episode. And then Saturday, we release a clip from one of the episodes that happen. And then Sunday's either a vlog, a meditation, or a clip. So 7 days a week, we're releasing content on the YouTube channel. Then on the same thing on audio, it happens the same thing on audio. There's a guest episode on Tuesday. There's that episode on Wednesday. There's Thursday, we take off. Sorry, it comes out Tuesday. The video comes out Wednesday. The audio comes out Thursday. Then the solo episode comes out Friday. Then we have a snippet of an episode that we found memorable that comes out on Sunday. And then we have a short version of something for everybody, easily distilled, on a Monday. So the audio version of Spotify, Apple, all those has 5 episodes a week. The YouTube has 7. That's where we really, 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 really turn pro. And then if you still love professional wrestling and you're into professional wrestling, I also do a professional wrestling WWE reaction YouTube channel where there's 5 to 7 videos a week. So I'm pumping out sort of anywhere between 12 to 14 videos every single week. And Champions Adjust as a podcast episode every single day. So I have a podcast episode every single day for Champions Adjust. I have a video almost every single day for Pro Wrestling Daily. I have a video every single day on my YouTube channel, and I have 5 pieces of audio content on Spotify every single week. That is a lot of content because I've turned pro. This is what I want to do. I want to create these types of things so I can make the world a better place. I can leave it better than I found it, which leads me all the way up to today, which I'm filming this episode on August 5th, 2025. And this episode number 400 comes out on August 22nd. So I'm filming it a little bit in advance, but this is episode 400 of the podcast. I'm filming it a couple weeks in advance because come September, I don't know what's going to happen because my baby is going to arrive. My son, Asher, is going to arrive, and I want to have as much time as possible to be able to spend with him and help my wife and all those sorts of things. So I do love to film episodes in advance, but I've absolutely loved, doing these episodes. And so this podcast is my baby. This is one version of sort of my business. This also leads into speaking engagements. This also leads to Shop for Everybody, which is the official home of You Are Loved and Something for Everybody and for the dads and for the moms and all that great merchandise. Again, like I said, I also have Champions Adjust, which is a sports performance brand, which has mindset coaching for young athletes, specifically baseball players. We have a podcast episode every day, 2 sports shows a week, which are released on my YouTube channel, but the Champions Adjust audio channel, and of course, a sick fucking clothing brand called Champions Adjust. Have a pro wrestling YouTube channel. I'm a professional public speaker, and I also have a mental health nonprofit called You Are Loved, where everything is tied in and connected to that. Some of the videos are connected to that. They're on You Are Loved. They're in YouTube, they're on Spotify. All this stuff is interconnected and interwoven because I have one massive transformative purpose to end mental suffering. Everything is filtered through that, through my core values of consistency, resilience, zest, hope, love, gratitude. Those are like the most important core values that I have. And I'm trying to live and filter through that, and everything heading in the direction of my massive transformative purpose, which is to end mental suffering. And the podcast is a vehicle for that. 400 episodes deep. You know the podcast history now, how we got here. And if you have any other questions about it, or you want me to go into further detail about certain things, let me know. Drop a comment, wherever you are, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, YouTube, Spotify, doesn't matter. Send me an email, send me a DM. Check me out anywhere. And if you really, really want to support the podcast and this journey that we're on, please check out our Patreon, which is linked in the show notes below. Become a member, $3 a month, a free member, doesn't matter. All of it supports us. I very much appreciate you. But the best marketing tool that we have on the planet is you copying a link to this episode and sharing it with as many friends as he possibly can. That's the best marketing tool we have. I appreciate you very much. Thank you very much. We're 400 episodes in. I can't wait to do this in episode 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, episode 1000. We're going for forever. This is what Something for Everybody is. I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate your support. None of this happens without you. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next time. Lots of love. Cheers.